Gangsterism didn't storm in with guns. It slipped in through tenders, contracts, and fake emergencies until the system crossed the point of no return.
South Africa didn't collapse overnight, Faye. It was wired like a bomb, one secret deal at a time, until criminals moved from partners to shadow rulers. By the time we realized it, municipalities weren't governed anymore. They were owned by tenderpreneurs posing as businessmen. This isn't a story. It's the daily reality of communities trapped by fear and guarded by corruption, but the leaders are smiling to the camera. Tonight, South Africans won't just watch, we'll finally be heard as we expose 10 major secret deals that turned South Africa into a gangster's playground. Now, for the evidence, our expose narrator takes you through verified Madlanga Commission dockets and documents sourced by our journalists on the ground. Dr. Komla, it's heartbreaking. South Africa didn't fall to gangsters overnight. It was built in silence, one corrupt contract at a time, until crime quietly replaced government. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe. What you're about to hear was never meant for ordinary South Africans, let alone you watching tonight.
South Africans have been living under a silent occupation where gangsters wear suits and power is traded in tenders, not ballots. In municipal offices from Durban to Joburg to Gqeberha, the paper looks clean, but the ground truth is dirty. Emergency contracts that never end, tankers that arrive only when pipes are cut, and security crews who moonlight as enforcers. They call it the procurement syndicate triangle, a loop where public money buys private muscle. But tonight, that circle of silence breaks because General Mkhwanazi has forced this country to finally confront what it feared to say out loud. 10. Durban, the water tanker fix that became a franchise. The drought years created a gap, but sabotage turned it into a business model. In eThekwini, engineers logged repeated valve failures. Then the tanker solution arrived like clockwork. Internal memos from 2023 and 2024 described armed escorts shadowing municipal tankers in Umlazi, Ntuzuma, and Phoenix, while private contractors were invoiced at premium rates. The phrase that stuck in interviews was simple township slang, the tanker mafia. Ministerial briefings later acknowledged syndicate gaming outages. City councilors called it extortion with paperwork. Banking traces cited by investigators show split payments through numbered close corporations tied to nightclub security bosses and fuel depot operators. Where names do surface, they do so in court dockets and SIU affidavits, with routes looping past depots in Springfield Park and Verulam. Officials under oath describe crews arriving first at burst sites, then disappearing just long enough for the taps to run dry again. By the time the supply returns, the invoice lines have doubled. A corporate governance review flagged missing GPS pings on fleet trackers between 2024-11-19 and 2025-03-24, the same window senior officials publicly vowed to squeeze out the tanker cartels. Community leaders in Chatsworth call the pattern paid to drink. Residents queue, councilors deflect, contractors cash out. Behind the fuel receipts sit protection retainers collected by forum-linked enforcers who also appear in construction site disputes. Forensic accounting systems later reconciled procurement approvals with bursts clustered along the N2 corridor, a coincidence auditors refused to accept. Months later, AML/KYC compliance tools froze related wallets tied to prepaid fuel cards. The city still avoids naming the syndicate heads. Gun teams do the talking. One emergency fix became a standing order, and every outage taught neighborhoods a lesson. Water flows when the fixer says go now. 9. Johannesburg, the hospital ledger that fed a tender kingpin. The numbers first looked routine: gloves, catering, bed linen, delivery fees. Then a senior finance official, Babita Deokaran, pulled a thread at Tembisa Hospital and the cloth tore. Payment batches she flagged matched companies later tied in reporting to businessman Hangwani Morgan Mamuela, whose Bantry Bay and Santon property buys drew attention after red flags. In sworn statements and leaked audits, officials describe urgent approvals pushed through at speed, then rerouted into supplier constellations, sharing directors, phone numbers, or bank proxies. Audit trail verification showed repeated cost centers, authorizing near identical invoices within days. Reviewers called it carbon copy billing.
When a contract team killed Deo Karan outside her home in 2021, it chilled staff who had begun to annotate purchase orders with quiet warnings. The SIU's asset moves attached supercars and homes, while investigators mapped nominee chains fanning out from hospital cash books. Inside the bank feeds, transaction tokens linked to courier services and cleaning suppliers spiked just before month end, a pattern consistent with cash-out preparations. Asset recovery workflows followed trailheads to directors' circles, and lawyers fought seizures. Public documents speak in careful language, alleged undue payments, irregular approvals, but the picture is blunt. Health budgets became a cash river that nourished a private empire. Staff remember vendor reps arriving with the confidence of insiders, phoning managers by first name and hinting that a missed stamp could become a problem. Vendor screening platforms later cross-matched supplier metadata against other Gauteng facilities and found the same DNA: phones, addresses, courier lockers repeating. What began as PPE urgency hardened into a system. One hospital ledger ended up rewiring how clinics bought, vendors billed, and feared traveled between loading bays and city streets. 8. Port Elizabeth, the storm drain deal that flooded a metro. When the 2019 floods hit Nelson Mandela Bay, emergency tenders flew. A storm drain cleaning consortium landed the work. Invoices cleared in 48 hours, and excavators rolled. Then the site stalled. Contractors told reporters that business forums demanded stakes. Engineers called it extortion. Older hands muttered that the playbook was not new. Crispian Over's How to Steal a City had mapped the metro's patron networks years earlier. By 2021, the names circulating in coffee queues were familiar: fixers, taxi boss intermediaries, and forum enforcers who also turned up at housing projects on the city's fringes. Procurement logs captured cloned user sessions from a VPN address outside town. Approvals fired just after midnight, often for additional debris clearance. An internal corporate governance review queried why GPS traces on municipal trucks vanished near Zwede and Kwadesi, while subcontractors' trackers pinged at a disused warehouse later raided for gun parts. Residents noticed the social tax. Small businesses paid access fees to keep delivery vehicles moving through soggy streets. Audit trail verification later tied urgent valve purchases to a supplier controlled by a counselor's associate. The SIU asked for affidavits. Asset recovery workflows traced cash-outs into 2 beachfront flats bought weeks apart, then into a casino's back office. Police briefings mentioned the construction extortion mafia now embedded in the Bay's projects. The city promised to normalize, but drains still overflowed, and councillors spoke in careful tones about safety. The leaked route cards show a habit. Crews arrive, threaten stoppage, secure subcontracts, and vanish. When the invoices reappear, the line items have multiplied while trenches remain full. For residents, the message is township wisdom: pay the fee or the water stays. One storm drain fix changed who polices the city after the rain. It lingered. Like and subscribe. Next, the stadium deal that armed a crew.
7. Durban, stadium security that turned into a protection tax. The first invoice said event safety. The next one said perimeter stabilization. And by the third quarter, the paperwork spoke a language everyone in eThekwini understood: pay the forum or pack up your tools. Around Moses Mabhida and the transport corridors that feed it, subcontract slots were ring-fenced by business forums that insiders trace back to the Delongo Kubona orbit, a structure that perfected the 10% tax on movement. Site managers describe how an advisory meeting would be called at a container office. A list of local companies would appear, and the principal contractor would be told to onboard them by Monday.
Refusal meant stoppages, vandalized gear, or nighttime visits to supervisors' homes. Mid-project variation orders multiplied to fund extra layers of site protection, and the forum bookkeepers learned municipal grammar faster than some councillors. Thumbs on tenders became hands in payroll. What moved this from soft coercion to hard capture was the way approvals were clocked in back-office systems. Batches released minutes before midnight. Geocags lost when bakis went off the grid, and supplier names ping-ponging between the same directors. 12 weeks into one upgrade pack, an internal reviewer ran audit trail verification and found that the same Gatewatch roster had been billed under 3 entities. 13 days later, a compliance officer mapped the cell phone numbers of community reps to a WhatsApp group that also coordinated stoppages at a Durban North housing site. Buried deeper was a set of ledger footprints, the kind forensic accounting systems are built to catch. Protection retainers exiting as training allowances, then reappearing as cash purchases at a Springfield Park auto yard. Later, a corporate governance review asked why a forum liaison's brother held a facilities pass marked VIP logistics. Nobody could explain it in an open session. Stadium lights stayed on, the city paid its bills, the men who owned the night got richer. In the corridors, staff dropped their voices and said the quiet thing. Bruh, the contract didn't hire security, it hired permission. 6. Johannesburg. Diesel, substations, and a quiet war over who keeps the lights on. Load shedding created a side economy, and Johannesburg's emergency supply chain learned its rules with bruises. City Power's crisis plan pushed diesel, mobile gensets, and high-risk substation guarding to the front of the queue. Then came the phone calls to depot managers, some from men who introduced themselves as associations representing welders and riggers, others from voices that didn't need a surname. Contractors who won the emergency lots say they were helped to hire local guards, then told to reroute road plans away from certain taxi ranks, then told their night convoys needed escorts.
In the West Rand and Soweto clusters, cable theft crews and illegal mining muscle overlapped. What started as site protection blurred into tribute. It didn't feel like a crime, it felt like rules. Inside the finance stack, the pattern was clinical. Requisition strings for diesel drops were time-boxed to late Fridays. Monday morning reconciliations always balanced, yet fuel volumes never matched generator logs. An engineer slipped the variance sheet to audit, where vendor screening platforms matched supplier email domains to mailbox aliases already flagged in a different city contract. 15 paragraphs into the memo, a second team used asset recovery workflows to track funds into 2 holding vehicles that bought cash cars out of Crown Mines. The names on those payment cards belonged to drivers on a substation guard roster. 14 days after a theft spike near Riverlea, an off-book rapid response vehicle appeared at a different site, registered to the very vendor whose bid had scored lowest on technicals 6 months earlier. No laws were rewritten on paper, they were rewritten on the ground. When a project manager tried to swap guard companies, his trucks were boxed in at an intersection by unknown sedans. He changed the roster the next day. In meetings, seniors spoke of stakeholder pressures, and juniors learned the Joburg version of township wisdom. You can schedule the diesel, China, but you can't schedule who takes it off your hands. 5. Gweberha, IPTS money, taxi muscle, and the tender that never stopped paying. Nelson Mandela Bay's integrated public transport system was sold as a fix. New routes, proper depots, and buses that kept time. Years later, bays along the corridor still sit half-built, but the payment pipes never ran dry. The first clue was banal. Copier paper boxes filled with addenda, each one extending a temporary operations contract while the backbone was finalized.
Project veterans say the unprintable part of the story lived at the interface with route owners, taxi bosses who had to be paid to keep the peace, fixers who resolved depot blockades for a fee, and local security outfits whose owners turned up at municipal briefings wearing two different badges. Officials describe site meetings where the loudest voice belonged to someone not on the organogram, a man who could guarantee that Monday would be quiet if Friday's EFTs went out. A data clerk noticed that depot security invoices and route conciliation fees peaked in the same weeks a specific corridor was meant to go live. She ran a set of checks that a later corporate governance review would formalize. Phone numbers on guard rosters belonged to relatives of a counselor's driver. One transport mediator doubled as a subcontractor at a housing project notorious for stoppages. Far away from press conferences, the bank side told a blunt tale. Under AML and KYC compliance tools, layered transfers jumped into casino float, then into matched deposits at car lots down Cape Road.
14 lines later in the spreadsheet, a different vendor, with the same accountant, invoiced for bus stop lighting remediation. The stops remained dark. As the IPTS stumbled through its second decade, the city learned to speak carefully about stakeholders and community trust, and residents learned to leave 10 extra minutes for every trip. On paper, the buses were coming. In practice, the network had been re-engineered to pay rent to the men who decide whose wheels can roll in the northern areas. A public transport plan didn't just stall. It taught Gqeberha what order looks like when the fare collector doesn't sit behind a bus window. 4. Durban-Joburg pipeline. The scrap, the steel, and the councillor's favorite yard. Some deals don't have a logo. They have a sound. The grind of a saw on municipal steel at 2 in the morning. Across the N3 spine that ties Durban to Johannesburg, emergency infrastructure safeguarding contracts blossomed the same year scrap prices spiked. Overnight, teams appeared with high-vis bibs and branded buckies, claiming mandates to secure assets along bridges and culverts. The city paid for fences, floodlights, and patrols. Residents watched bolts vanish on the same weekend. A councillor from the East Rand was overheard telling a depot supervisor, "Use my guys, they're local." Later, that councillor cut a ribbon at a scrapyard expansion. When a combative depot head demanded logs, the spreadsheets he got looked perfect. Too perfect. Shift rosters lined up to the minute, kilometer counts matched theoretical routes, and no alarms ever tripped. It took a side-channel tip for auditors to compare those routes with cell phone tower hits. The result was the kind of breadcrumb trail audit trail verification loves. 6 phones in the patrol roster spent their nights pinging a yard in Wadeville. Somewhere else in the stack, a quiet investigator fed invoice metadata into forensic accounting systems and got the same trio of surnames that had wrecked a roads contract 2 years prior. 13 paragraphs apart in the draft report, another unit escalated a note from a bank. 2 protection vendors shared a bookkeeper who moved cash with a loop of prepaid cards. When a reporter asked why new fences keep collapsing, a site foreman said the quiet thing in plain Joburg, because somebody sold tomorrow's bolts today. In the next council cycle, budgets rose to secure critical points, and the same bibs turned up with new logos. The pipeline stayed busy. Diesel up, steel out, invoices in. The public learned a new proverb: fix once, pay twice, live with the gap. A bridge is just a road that refuses to drown. Our next 4 cases show how even bridges can be taught to kneel. If you want this kind of reporting to keep cutting through the smoke, like the video and subscribe. Next, we pull the thread on an urgent school rebuild that became a fortress for men with radios. 3. Durban and KZN schools emergency rebuilds that hired permission before bricklayers. When KZN's school rebuild and sanitation rush shifted into high gear, the paperwork read like virtue. Ablutions, roofs, fencing, drainage. Then foremen learned the first crew to arrive wore plain clothes and spoke for a business form that could keep sites quiet or turn them into lessons.
In Umlazi, Kwamashu, and the KZN South Coast, principals watched delivery trucks queue at gates while liaisons negotiated subcontracts that were not on the BOQ. Procurement logs show midnight addenda for site protection and accelerated perimeter control. Cost centers attached to fencing grew fatter than roofing. A junior quantity surveyor, fresh out of varsity, ran her own audit trail verification after noticing that 3 different community reps shared a bank proxy and a bookkeeper linked to 2 security CCs with near identical names. Variations multiplied, classrooms didn't. Behind the scenes, district officials escalated threats quietly. Phones banged down, tools vanished, and night visits set new terms. One principal was told her school would bleed cement if she blocked a forum list, an idiom that needs no translation in Durban. Invoices for overtime protection landed the week after a Baki convoy boxed in a brick supplier. When a compliance unit tested vendor files with vendor screening platforms, it found cloned director IDs recurring across mediation, security, and transport vendors. The same WhatsApp numbers also coordinated stoppages at 2 unrelated housing sites. A later corporate governance review mapped payments to a ring of fuel card wallets and a Springfield Park panel beater linked to forum figures who had previously turned up around stadium upgrades. Engineers began to write in euphemisms, stakeholder sensitivity, root risk, local onboarding, while building managers learned to leave room in the schedule for a negotiation that wasn't on any Gantt chart. The social cost hid in small humiliations: half-finished toilets with locked doors, roofing sheets stacked but never fixed, and learners diverted to afternoon rotations because classrooms existed only on paper. Ask a caretaker why the new fence went up twice, and he'll shrug. First fence was for them, second one was for us. On the ledger, schools were saved. On the ground, the rebuild hired permission before bricklayers, and a generation learned that the bell sometimes rings for men with radios. 2. Johannesburg Rail and Depots. Security tenders that paid to lose the tracks. In theory, Joburg's passenger rail needed guardians. Cable thieves cut lines, stations bled metal, and trains sat like carcasses in yards from George Gosh to Bromfontein. In practice, urgent security awards taught contractors a city rule. Protecting the network meant negotiating with the people who already owned the night. Station managers describe alignment meetings where taxi route representatives, forum envoys, and private security outsourcers arrived together. The pitch was tidy. Hire our companies, we'll keep order and delivery convoys safe. Those who tried other guards met misunderstandings at the gates, and who wants a burned substation on a Monday? Finance teams tracking requisitions found Friday's busiest. Overnight batches pushed through as risk surges. A young analyst stitched together number patterns across 3 suppliers and saw the same surname flicker in bank references. Then, in a director's circle, exposed in older rail scandals. When she escalated, forensic accounting systems connected the dots. Layered EFTs moving into holding entities that paid cash for sedans registered to drivers listed on yard patrol rosters. 2 weeks later, asset recovery workflows tied the cars to late-night convoys that appeared near cable theft hotspots minutes before alarms died. A separate memo flagged that community safety liaisons were drawing monthly retainers, and that several phone numbers on station guard lists matched men previously named in extortion dockets on construction sites along the same corridor. The euphemism stakeholder management did heavy lifting while platforms crumbled. By the time auditors ran a corporate governance review, stations billed as stabilized still had smashed turnstiles and blacked-out stairwells. Commuters learned new routes on foot. Spaza shops sprouted where kiosks had been, and the only timetable that ran on time was the extortion calendar. Senior officials spoke publicly about sabotage and recovery. Procurement officers swapped tips for writing scopes that kept legitimate bidders brave enough to pitch. On paper, security improved.
In reality, the city paid to lose the tracks, teaching rail staff what every depot guard now repeats to rookies. We don't just secure assets, we secure the right to arrive. 1. N2, N3 spine, Durban to Joburg. The secure works of monetized chaos. The country's busiest arteries, N2 along the coast and N3 up the spine, became a live experiment in how a contract can rent power. After storm damage and theft spikes, secure works packages exploded. Fencing, flood repair, culvert hardening, bridge lighting, and convoy protection. The logos on the bakkies changed quarterly. The bibs stayed. Principal contractors learned the choreography fast. First, a community business forum meeting sets the floor price for peace. Then, a local partner gets slotted into procurement. Then, your budget grows a new rib called site stabilization. Refuse, and a grader's battery disappears, a floodlight falls, or your crew gets boxed in outside a filling station at dusk. Inside the systems, the pattern was legible. Batch approvals hit just before midnight, with site diaries later reconstructed to match. Kilometer logs looked perfect until audit trail verification compared them with tower pings that put whole patrol shifts at a Wadeville or Isipingo yard. A transport engineer who asked the wrong question found his convoy flanked by unmarked cars that escorted him off a ramp and lectured him on local processes. Subsequent AML-CYK compliance tools runs froze prepaid fuel cards linked to 3 protection vendors that happened to share a bookkeeper with the notorious scrap buyer. Meanwhile, invoices for bolt replacement cycles multiplied even as bridge bolts kept vanishing. Tomorrow's fence sold today. When a regional corporate governance review checked overlapping director names, it found the same family of companies had rotated through site protection, rapid response, and community liaison on adjacent lots. The names also floated through form statements that once made the evening news for shutting down projects until a 30% slice was guaranteed. Commuters met the outcome in potholes that reappeared after rain, in lane closures that outlived the hazard, in 1,000 micro delays that feel like weather but are policy by other means. Ask an old hand in depot overalls why the lights died on a fixed ramp, and he'll sigh, because the invoice went out before the screwdriver came back. On the spreadsheet, resilience increased. In real life, the secure works loop monetized chaos, and everyone learned the rule of the road. Progress pays rent to whoever can switch it off. A budget can build clinics, classrooms, and bridges, or it can rent silence, buy permission, and teach a city to kneel. We traced how emergency fixes grew side pockets, how liaisons became payroll lines, and how muscle learned municipal grammar. If you want more reporting that follows the ledger into the night and back, like the video, drop a comment with your city's quiet stories, and subscribe so the next exposé lands in your feed the moment it's live.